Hey everyone, welcome to the ATDev Podcast. So happy to be joined today by Todd Roberts and Professor Tapo from Cornell. Hey, how are you, Tapo?
Doing great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I know we've been connected for a few years now, but I'd love it if you could give a bit of background on yourself for our listeners.
Absolutely. Yeah, I am a faculty in the Department of Computer Science at Cornell University. I lead the EmPRISE Lab, where basically the lab's vision is to enable people with mobility limitations to enable robots to help people with mobility limitations with various activities of daily living, such as feeding, bed bathing, dressing, and things like that. In general, we are, as a lab, we are not only very passionate about developing technologies that assist people with mobility limitations, but also really evaluating these technologies with real users in the real world, in their homes and hospital settings and things like that. Yeah, I'm very excited to be here and to talk to you both.
Yeah, yeah, it's so cool. It's so cool to connect with researchers that are developing some of this technology that really helps people. I'm curious to learn a little bit more about your origin story. Did you always want to go into assistive robotics, or how did you discover that?
Yeah, this is a fantastic question. From my undergrad itself, which was in India, I was interested in robotics, but not necessarily. I hadn't decided which sub area of robotics to work in. Now, what happened was after my undergrad, I decided to do a master's in South Korea, and there I was exposed. Like my thesis was about surgical robotics, so I was getting
Yeah,
into health, but still not assistive. And then I started doing my PhD at Georgia Tech in the healthcare robotics lab. And in the lab, there my thesis was mainly about how can you give robots the sense of touch so that they can
mm,
touch different objects around the world, humans around the world, to perceive what they're touching, and that would enable the robots to do different strategies, like more intelligent strategies. During my PhD in my lab, one person, Henry Evans, was a person with quadriplegia, and he used to join some of our lab meetings, and through him I learned about how robots can actually make an impact in his life, and he was it was actually making an impact in his life. And I was blown away because there I could see an area which is not only very technically challenging, but also I could really see the impact with my eyes, like right there in front of me. And that's
yeah.
what convinced me that this is something I want to work on. And so then I went on and did my postdoc, where I started working on robot assisted feeding systems. And then now I have my own lab at Cornell, where we are working on robot assisted systems for various activities of daily living. So yeah, that's basically the story, I would say. Origin story.
Yeah, that is so cool. And yeah, you touched on something that has been a theme across the podcast is assistive robotics is so technically challenging, but also so interdisciplinary too.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Y-
yeah, that's an incredible origin story, and I feel like mirrors a lot of how I got into assistive technology as well. And as you were reading off your mission statement of your lab, I feel like we could put that at the top of our website as well. I feel very honored to be working side by side with somebody on the same mission, right?
Same
Yeah,
here. Same
yeah.
here.
But one question I have for you: you guys are working on such a difficult problem with helping people be able to eat with robotics. What, from your perspective, is the next like big shoe to drop in the robotics and eating sport? Is it something on the AI ML algorithm side? Is it on the hardware side? What are you really excited about for the next step?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. So the thing is, this field, right, which I call like basically physical robot caregiving. So we are building caregiving robots, and there has been a lot of research on social caregiving as well. But what I would like to call it, like what my lab focuses on, is physical caregiving, which means robots have to come near humans and even physically touch humans to assist them with these various activities, right? Now, the biggest challenge on a high level, the thing is, robots should be able to do these tasks, but also be very safe. So efficient, but also be very safe, right? Now, well, what I would say is that safety, all the safety aspect of these things, when a robot comes very close to humans, and especially in, let's say, our homes and
Mhm.
hospital settings where environments are very unstructured. Like, for example, my kitchen would look very different today and then tomorrow and the next day. And my kitchen would be very different from your kitchen and somebody
Yeah,
else's kitchen, Owen's kitchen, right? And the point here is that these environments are very unstructured, and so, all of these autonomous things that we develop for robots, there will always be an edge case where things may fail.
Yeah.
And so, there, it's very important that when we think about safety, even though we develop the most sophisticated algorithms and everything, there will always be an edge case where these fail. Maybe there is no Wi-Fi. Maybe the sensor suddenly stopped working. If the sensor stops working, then how would the algorithms work? And all of these things. So, at the lowest level, when everything fails, there still needs to be the hardware platform itself needs to be safe itself. So that, let's say, the robot, all the algorithms fail, the sensors fail, and it comes to your mouth and hits your mouth or something like that. The hardware itself is incapable of hurting you,
Yeah.
right? So, this is where I think we really need a full stack approach where we need to do like a software hardware co-design, right? Like the hardware needs to be safe, but also the software needs to be safe. Now I agree, with the current hardware that is available, we can do a lot more on the software side to make it safe, but to truly deploy this in unstructured settings in millions of homes,
Yeah.
we need safety in the hardware level as well, which
Yeah.
yeah.
means there is a scope of development in both hardware and software.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think one of the things I'm really excited about is that you touched on the kitchen environment being so unstructured and different from person to person or even day to day. I think something that's exciting about the ramp platform is that we'll be able to provide human reinforcement learning
Yes.
into this development and having these algorithms be guided by a person that's actually using the tools.
Absolutely agreed with you. Like, imagine, let's say, even though all these, with the advancements in AI, ML, the capability of robots, the autonomy in robots are increasing. And even if it comes to a point where, let's say, there are some tasks where it can do autonomously, like for a person, for a user to accept this robot in their day-to-day lives, nobody would want to be just a puppet, right? Just sitting there and the robot is just helping them. It's very important, the human dignity and agency. So humans should be in the loop in these algorithms to actually deploy this in the real world. So I completely agree with you, Owen, what you said. Like humans always should be in the loop for these.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's going to make for a better, algorithm in the end too,
Yes,
because as you said, there's always going to be edge cases as to how do
absolutely.
you open that door or how do you pick up that cup. But
Yep.
if you have a human there with the robot guiding it, we'll be able to have some really improved reinforcement learning.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that there's a lot of parallels in my mind that are popping up to how people think about safety with self-driving. There will always be some risk, but I think the risk tolerance, people's risk tolerance for self-driving vehicles is already quite low and much lower than the risk that they put themselves at by driving themselves. Risk tolerance for a fork coming at your face when you can't move is going to be even lower. How do you think about the complexity of the, I think a lot of people are familiar with this autonomy idea. They might be familiar with self-driving. From my perspective, it's even more open-ended in this space, another order
Yes.
of magnitude. Would you agree? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to give you an idea, like generally, typically, when you think about safety, like typically in robotics, not everywhere, but typically in robotics, the idea is okay, there is an absolute notion of safety. So let's say the robot is not applying more than, I don't know, n newtons or x newtons of forces or something like that, right? But what makes it very interesting for these human or user facing applications is that there is also this thing about perceived safety. What
Yes.
that means is, what I may feel like it's safe, you may not feel like it's safe, or Owen may not feel like it's safe, which means the concept of notion itself is very personalized, right? And that adds a whole another level of complexity, because how do you first figure out what the person's level of that comfort or safety is, that
Yeah.
personalized safety?
Yeah.
What do they perceive to be safe, but what is actually safe? And then how can the robot adapt to that person's preferences?
Yeah.
So that is a whole another thing. Coming specifically to feeding application, as you mentioned, there is a lot of complexity there as well in terms of the physical safety as well. For example, there are some people, let's say somebody with spinal muscular atrophy, they may have very limited.
All right,
Well,
we're back. So we were talking about safety and user preference and how our safety tolerance for self-driving cars has dropped, but how are we going to see people adopt robotic feeding and safety?
Yeah, so I think safety in robotic feeding. So basically, two aspects that I want to mention, which is one is beyond feeding, like in any user facing, specifically very intimate user facing applications, where safety typically in robotics, if you think about it, it's primarily many people consider as an absolute notion of safety, which is okay, what is the amount of force I can apply before it hurts somebody? And that's it. It's like a force thresholding thing. But if you think about any user facing applications, beyond this absolute notion of safety, there is a perceived notion of safety. And that is different for every user. What I perceive to be safe may not be safe for some other person. And that's where the real challenge lies, because then how does a robot not only calibrate itself to what does safety mean for the user and then personalize its policies based on that? So that's one thing. The other thing, especially for robot assisted feeding, is that because of the feeding application itself, the physical interaction, the robots, like robot actually picking up a food and putting it inside somebody's mouth, is very subtle and complex. For example, somebody with spinal muscular atrophy may have very limited mouth opening. Somebody with arthrogryposis may be able to chew food with only one end of their mouth. Somebody may have spasms when they're eating, and it's very difficult to predict it. So the robot, imagine a robot with a fork coming and feeding you inside your mouth while these conditions may happen. So it's very important for the robot to be safe under all these conditions. And so that makes this an extremely challenging problem. So I would say, compared to self-driving, there are two aspects that's very important. One is because there is physical contact between people, and we are talking about people with very severe mobility limitations with various derivative conditions that may be very adversarial to the robot's movement. It becomes a very complex thing. And plus, of course, every user is different, and in such intimate human robot interaction experience, understanding the perceived safety of every user and personalizing to them is a big challenge as well.
Yeah, yeah, it seems the big part was about understanding the user's intention.
Yes.
And I know some of the remote studies I did with your lab and guiding the robotic arm remotely were
Yes.
so interesting because you're able to share your intention as an end user. And so I'm curious, do you have a design philosophy or an approach to how you translate human intention into robotic output?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. In general, our design philosophy for every project is first, like it's so one thing that's very important in this area is that it's very important for us to be continuously in the loop with stakeholders, right? Because otherwise we may just we may just invent problems that may not actually be useful for assistance in the real world.
Yeah,
So when I say stakeholders, people with mobility limitations, they're caregivers, healthcare professionals, everybody. So in our design philosophy, like this is something that we are very strict about this. Like we have almost bi-weekly meetings with our stakeholders, many of our stakeholders for every project. Other than that, the way we start every project is, let's say we have a problem to work on, we would always do some kind of formative study to just understand what is the scope of the problem. Because of course the holy grail of robotics is everybody say I am going to develop Rosie the robot for Jetsons, but
yeah,
that's not realistic at this, like in a short horizon. We want to talk to our stakeholders to find out what should be the scope, what should be the generalization scope of a project. Once we do that, we just go back to whiteboard and then start developing our methods and things like that. Every time after we do our methods, we don't immediately test it with our target users. First, we want to make sure we have some iterations in simulation, then some hardware in the loop. So, for example, for feeding, we got some mouth model from dentist's office, and we literally sensorized and actuated them, and like just to test how the is the robot being safe. Then we try it with people without mobility limitations, just some user studies, just to see how things go. And then finally, when we feel ready, we deploy, like we first do this with people with mobility limitations in our lab, and then we deploy them if the project has reached a certain kind of maturity. At any point in this cycle, whenever we feel like we have to take a step back because something is not right, that's where we iterate and reiterate. So co-developing this participatory design, basically what I call it, and what everybody in the community calls it, this is very important. So that's basically, I would say, what our design philosophy is for every project that we do. Yeah.
That's awesome. Back to your comment about Rosie the robot, right? What is your perspective on the humanoid form factor versus the task specific form factor? Are you excited about the humanoids? Are you bullish on Do you think we will have robot caregivers? In
Fantastic question.
yeah,
Fantastic question, Todd. So I would say this. I see some benefits of the having two arms and things like that. I don't see a very clear benefit of having two legs given the safety risks it may pose
Mhm.
in somebody's homes. Imagine suddenly a child running in somebody's home and all the safety risks it poses.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think to start with, while yes, as a field, that should be our goal to develop Rosie the robot, I think to get there, this is my perspective. To get there, if I think about the trajectory of, let's say, LLMs or VLMs or things like that, we need data. To get data, we cannot hope to get this data that covers this whole distribution in a lab setting because it's impossible to recreate all the variabilities that happen in the real world. What that means is, I think we need to be able to deploy task specific robots that can do one or two tasks very well. And while we deploy, it's like a data flywheel. We'll collect data and we gradually increase more features and
yeah,
features to be able to get to that general purpose thing at some point in the far future.
Yeah.
And in terms of humanoid platforms, as if you ask me today, I would not put them in somebody's home as of yet because of all the safety concerns that as I mentioned. I think I would go with wheeled or even wheelchair mounted arms or some wheeled platforms just because of the safety aspects of things.
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I agree. A humanoid could drive a car, but it's a lot more efficient to just have the actuation happen elsewhere. So I completely agree. Awesome, Tapo. Thank you so much for your time today. If people want to learn more about you or your lab, or where can they go to find more information?
Yeah, thank you so much, Owen and Todd, for having me. It was awesome chatting with you. For people, they can just Google EmPRISE Lab, Cornell University. Or if you go to the EmPRISE Lab, my email is also there, like under my name. It's basically my first name at cornell.edu. You can either email me or just Google my lab website, and I would be very happy to be in touch.
Great. Thank you again for your time today and all the amazing work that you do. And thank you to our listeners. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and share. And stay tuned until the next one. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much.